Today, I was thinking quite a lot about what it is that we should be moving towards. And I hear some ideas in the MGTOW community. The first one that's presented, and maybe the most obvious, is transhumanist. It's where essentially we phase out women completely. Um, not, and no, don't misconstrue that and think I'm saying they're advocating the active destruction of women. I've never met a single MGTOW who's ever said that in thousands of hours of videos that I've watched. So, no. No one's saying go out and destroy women. No one. Of course, except Ted Bundy or something. Um, so, the the solution follows that there are, number one, uh, artificial wombs or created wombs where we're able to, and eventually we'll have this technology if we don't already, where you can just shoot your load into a machine and out pops a baby for you. Um, and the whole society is overhauled to merely favor the directives of men. Um, that's where you take the procreative power from women and just genetically. I mean, we're looking at genetic engineering at that point, where you never get a woman, and more or less for pleasure. As men, we're going to be fucking VR and sex robots, perhaps transsexuals, which I I think transsexuals are cool. I like VR, sex robots. It's amazing. The the list goes on, and we would find new levels of sexuality that are just amazing. Now, with that said, it's very bleak for women uh, when you take that look, and albeit functionally in one moment functionally in my life, women serve little. Um, they're everything that a MGTOW says that women are. And just go watch some MGTOW videos, and you'll figure that out. Uh, but there is this sort of I don't know quite what it is, but there's a certain value that women provide to men, um, that for our minds. There's something in our, like, because when you take the red pill for a long time, um, there's and you're just so low, and then you go, because I've actually done that, where I went full red pill, and then I took a blue pill and ventured into the world. It was a massive mistake, but there's, you get this really ravenous yearning for women, and I think that it has something to do with uh, maybe women are a good sort of distraction for our minds, like, because you put a man alone in a cave for 2 years and no contact, and he's going to become sort of spiritually aligned. He's going to find, naturally, men just sort of land there, and the only thing left to do at that point is you because you've met with your highest self, and once you meet with a woman, you find all these weird adjustments, and so I'm not sure if there's something biological to it, because is there really some value that we're not seeing. That's sort of what I'm looking at. Is there really some sort of value that we're not yet aware of completely in the female gender that is, sort of, perhaps it's non-essential completely, but perhaps it has some value that we can't derive from men and sex bots. Maybe there's sort of some value here that we're overlooking. And in that case, I've pondered, what would a natural society look like given all of our advancements? Because this is actually should be its own separate video, but I'm gonna shoehorn it in here. Everything that we've developed as far as human social interactions, morality, etc., it was all invented in context. Let me reframe that. I do believe in an objective morality. I'm just sort of everything that we've constructed around that. You know what I'm saying? And how we interact with people and organize society on a social level. All of this was invented in a context when we didn't have the internet, when we didn't have weapons that could blow up entire cities, when we didn't have all of this shared information. So everything is kind of out of date. And so, as we're fighting and clawing at each other over little things that are, cultural for us, but someone else doesn't believe it and they come from a different place, and everyone's got a different context, and our ethoses are alien, and everyone's trying to sort of, go around and brainwash each other because I can't believe you don't believe this, you must, everyone's like that. And so it's this, we're having to redo all of that. And one of those things is the red pill. It's understanding that more or less man's relationship to women throughout history has been exclusively built on gaslighting. They have been gaslighting us and railroading us since the beginning of our existence. We have been simultaneously the oppressor and the victim of this relationship, and the enforcer on others throughout history, because women are so good at manipulation. And we've fallen for the trick forever. Until now, where the red pill is being spread en masse, and so men can see, they have, seer vision, seer, oracle, whatever the fuck that thing is that can see everything. We can see it all, and it's all laid out bare, and it can't be hidden. I mean, at one time it was really the case that men were completely subject to this gaslighting, where women are like, I told you 1,000,000 times, and you're like, okay, maybe I wasn't paying attention, all right, I'll just go and fix your problem or whatever, and now we understand that was all bullshit. The entirety of that experience, all the stress that they put on men for no reason. All they had to do is ask, but instead they manipulate us. And so, there's this huge problem, and we all see it, and that's created the red pill. And so, what would a red pill society look like if we didn't just phase women out, is, I think, a good question. And so I'm going to give you my thoughts. If you have thoughts yourself, I'd really like to hear them too. Maybe we can actually fix society and also include the transhumanism stuff, so that women have a place or whatever. I don't know. I don't really care, but on some level, hey, maybe women do have this value or something, right? So my initial thoughts are very much in line with the fact that you're a MGTOW, and I'm a MGTOW, and we actually don't need women. That's the that's the crux of this, is that we don't need them. So are they useless, And so in you can pick your most traditional conservative family, and you'll find, so it's this, he's a stereotype. He's a dude sitting in his fucking chair, and his wife is saying something. He's just go make me a sandwich, and she goes and makes him a sandwich, right? And it's a meme now. But that's like a thing, is that a useful, sort of archetype for the nature of a man and woman's relationship? And, could we apply that to society? I mean, more or less what we're really talking about, and from a biblical perspective, it's certainly the case that basically because of their nature, and this isn't because they're weaker. This actually has nothing to do with how physically weak they are, except that it's more easily enforced. But are women just meant to be sort of a slave in the society, and are they better off that way? And do they deserve it? So I think there's an argument for them deserving it, in that if you observe a woman, and most MGTOW, you'll be able to see this. You observe a woman, all they're trying to do is take power and put you in a lesser position. Even when you give them total fairness and justice, even when you give them every equal opportunity, all they want to do is take power and put you in a lesser position. And because of that nature, on some level, I think they deserve to be slaves. If that is your genuine ethos. And also, when interacting with women, I barely see anything anymore. I see right through them. And what they really, I mean, it's like they don't genuinely believe anything. They appear to me very much like, chat body. They're kind of just talking, which is a meme, but there's a truth in it. And at some point they begin to shit test you. And when you realize that this is more or less just a shit testing chatbot with a consciousness, how they operate. I'm talking about their operational directives. I'm not talking about their intrinsic value, because I'm a vegan. I believe that every conscious creature has that value. If it can suffer, you shouldn't make it suffer. But I also believe that there's certain rules in all of this. It's like, well, does that mean that you should go out into the jungle and try to cuddle with a tiger? It's like, no. You actually should make sure you're secure in your safety, with respect to positioning of tigers. And the same goes for women, and it's very much the case that women, or actually, sorry, humans are exceptional in some way to animals, in that we have reasoning, logical, or I should, at least men can do this. I'm not so sure about women, but when you look at women's nature, the fact that their nature is to put you in that lesser position, it lends to a rule about, spiritually speaking, that they should always be under. Whenever you can find a creature that merely tries to put you under them, they deserve to be under. That I believe that is the most sincere form of justice. In exactly the same way, for example, psychopaths. They they have no empathy, and therefore, I've sort of gone. I think I've made plenty of videos on this. They actually don't deserve human rights because they're not technically a human in the same way that we are. They not to say you should torture them if you find it's like, we'll use any of your favorite psychopath, Ramirez or Dahmer or something. Should you torture them? No, because they're conscious and they can suffer. But should they be destroyed and removed from society? Absolutely. Even before they commit the crime, their brain is already in a position to be harmful and evil, and is just given over completely to what their brain has them programmed to do, which is, without empathy, act. And so the same, obviously, women are not psychopaths. I'm using this as an analogy. But in the same way, there's a nature to all of this, and that's exactly what MGTOW discussion is about many times. Is we're talking about nature and how we should function with that nature. So, how would it look? And for me, how I've began to notice, because obviously marriage is out of the question. And here's another thing. So in a society where marriage is out of the question, where are we going? Where are we going? The species, let's say everyone does that, the species is done, given our current ethos. And that's why I think that the ethos needs to be reformed, and ultimately society, if we're ever to survive. And obviously I'm sort of barring transhumanism in this discussion just for the sake of discussion. So you can find that the safest route for a man, no, before I go into that, you cannot be a MGTOW and be married. And if you're living with a woman, you can't be a MGTOW. Now, these are basically givens, but I'm going to tell you the reasons. First of all, it's like the whole point, but the part that people forget still to this day, especially when watching videos like Stefan Molyneux or Stefan Molyneux, you can't actually speak purely about MGTOW topics as long as you're living with a woman or you're married to one. And that's because, on a biological level, the most potent weapon against a man's mind, the most corrupting force, is a woman's biology. If you are constantly exposed to a woman, for one, you're either tiptoeing around your wife, or two, she has biologically brainwashed you. And so you can no longer speak clearly and coherently on these topics. And I'm not saying that to invent some weird fallacy. I'm saying that's a biological fact. We're predisposed to pandering to women when we are cohabitating with them, or we have a close relationship, or because people tend to, we're including them in the moral community, and we're trying to defend them. You become a white knight no matter what. It's just the nature of the relationship. It's the nature of this. And women are supposed to do this, because in nature, they need you to be in that, and forever, ad nauseum, they will put you in that. And no matter how hard you try to get out, they will repeatedly do that, and they will stress you out and make your life hell until you're in that position, because you've got to defend that baby. That's nature. And so you can't speak clearly. You're not a MGTOW if you're in that relationship. You can't even speak in clear, pure MGTOW terms. You're incapable. So what does that say about nature? What does that say about a MGTOW future? Does it mean that we're completely barred from having children in this scenario? And I think the answer is actually no, we're not. And the way that this is done, it it happens that we can have children and be completely detached from a woman, and that is the only, in my view, that is the only future that MGTOW has in this light. Now, what that looks like in practice could be kind of complicated. We might have to invent a society where the women are kind of isolated, after they have children, or I don't know, they're isolated. They're in a way separate, and I think that this is a wiser take on how we function, because give them over to rearing the child and father that child on separate terms. Never perhaps it's the case that having the least contact with a woman while you have the same child is the best possible outcome. Perhaps it's the case that you can find your greatest understanding about the world around you by, okay, you get raised by your mother when you're a baby, and then you meet your father a little bit later, and you live with him and you learn how to function as a man. You go and you live, and in some way, I mean, this is sort of maybe echoing my childhood, and I actually somewhat value my childhood as a parent, or as a child of divorce. My mother and my father divorced around age 10. I lived with my father and I lived with my mother, and I went back and forth, and I really got to know who was telling me wisdom and who was telling me madness. I'm not saying it was perfect, but my father, when I was young, because he had no mate at that time, was candid and clear, and everything made sense. Only after he found another woman did his I'm back at square one, basically, Mother, a man corrupted by a female, and a female. Actually, two moms in this case, which did fuck me up in some ways. I can see that now. But after leaving the plantation, you can regain that insight that I saw that my father was presenting when he was single, right? And it's funny because it comes through in like comedians and jokes and stuff like this. They're always making jokes that are totally red-pilled, but then people walk away from the venue and they just drop it out of their mind. Like you'll find comedians like, how I'm just gonna make one up. You know how you can think that you didn't do anything wrong, but then you find out from your woman that you didn't do the dishes and she told you 100 times already. It's like there's one dish in there and you just put it there. But yeah, that's more gaslighting. There's tons of these red pill jokes in comedians. They're always saying them, but people just leave it behind, right? They leave it at the venue. Until now. So I don't know, I got kind of sidetracked. But yeah, moving forward with MGTOW, I think that if it doesn't go totally transhumanist, we find a role for women. And if I'm being totally honest, I mean, make me a sandwich is the essence of this. It's really genuinely, women actually do make good workers, and men actually are quite good at doing nothing. And I don't know if you know this, but in lion society, how it works is there's a male lion, and he sits on his fucking ass, and he waits as all his lionesses go and hunt food. They bring it back. He eats most of it, and they get what's left. And this is a for me, I look at this and I see a functional model for our nature. And we're in this sort of tragic misstep where it went from men doing all of the hard work to women being completely unsatisfied with that, to the point where they're marching in the streets and, no, we want to work too, we deserve to work, so fine, you can work. But when we put women on the same level as us, they try to put us under them, and they're quite good at doing that in this context. To the point where the red pill, now we're red pill. And it's not a good thing, or it shouldn't have been a good thing. It's a natural consequence of this terrible circumstance, is the best way to put it. And so, how do we change that? I really think that the natural progression here is letting women keep the work, letting them take care of all that busybody nonsense, while more or less the men don't do much. We do less. That's my point here, is that men should be doing less. We've done a lot. We've done more than our fair share throughout society, throughout history, sorry. And at this point, to me, it really is clear. It's like, do I want to be out there, doing all this bullshit? Actually, not really. And I'm willing to step back. And I think this is a huge part of MGTOW, is that most of us are thinking that way. Is very much, let's take a step back and work less. And that's good. That's actually good. I think that's what's the next step, and in a way, and here's the thing. Women are desperate, naturally. They're desperate for men. They're just desperate. And we're not like that in the same way, where we can completely turn that off. And so, because that's the case, I see, and here's the other thing. We're not interested in the system. When this whole endeavor has become toxic to us, so we're leaving the plantation. My take is that women should sustain the plantation. They can work the field, they can do everything, and we just sit back and do nothing here. And our role will be never to destroy them, basically. And I really, I mean, when you really think about it, this is what the lions are doing. This is what how the lions live. And there's the thing is also, I mean, this isn't a bad thing for men or women. Now, it's so long video. I want to add this last little bit before I let the video cut off here. 28. So, finally, there's a difference between men and women, obviously. But one of those differences is actually our response to sexual activity. So, now if you find, if you take any alpha, whatever that really means in our current society, just Channing Tatum, pick a big, muscular, handsome, rich man, right? Okay. Now, this guy's banging like 7 women in a week, 7 different women per week, right? Maybe 9 or 15 or something. Just because that's nature. Nobody's angry. Not even the women he's banging. There's a swirling group of hoes that are just thoughting around him perpetually. They all know that the others are thoughting. They're angry at the other ones for thoughting to their man, or who they wish that was their man. But you know, they're just thoughting, and they all understand that this big orgy surrounding one single man is okay. There's nothing morally reprehensible about this. They don't care. They're just banging and banging and banging and banging. That's just their normal, like, regular existence. That's natural. Now, the only time we see the reverse is in porn. This is the only time, and or in gangbangs that you know happen naturally. But more or less, you don't actually find you don't find normally that there are a bunch of guys all banging the same girl, no matter how hot she is, and all the guys know about each other and are completely okay with that. It's like that's not our natural state. No, I'm not saying that I couldn't participate in it. I'm just saying that normally that's not how humans tend to find uh, their happy place. So when I think about a future of our species, I think in terms of lions, you know, because that's exactly what's happening with lions. There's one male, there's a bunch of females, and there's some males growing up that the other males kind of worrisome about. And that one lion has so many kids that he can't even keep track of them. But he's doing his male lion thing. He's just, you know, living that nature. And I think that is ideal. So actually, what I'm really advocating for is a very extreme form of masculinity and femininity, because what I'm really saying is that in the ideal world that I view, there's individual guys who happen to basically get all of the women, which is the trending stats recently. But I mean officially, like we just recognize that as the model, you know, and society just accepts. So then there's, but that does leave this 80% of guys who basically are they're just left behind, right? And I think that that's okay.